you're going to have to fight your own fight, little bro. Like, there's going to be some things that take place. All I can tell you is it's not going to be something I can save you from. You're going to have to go through it.
Welcome to another edition of Be Great Podcast, where we're always speaking and talking with great people who've done phenomenal things. And today I have a special guest for us. We have a gentleman named Richard. Richard, how you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm blessed, bro. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor and a privilege to serve on your platform.
Well, man, we're so glad to have you, man. If you wouldn't mind, give a quick introduction of a little bit about who is Richard.
Man, Richard Yeargin III, born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, native. That father is Richard Yeargin Sr. My brother is Richard Yeargin Jr., and that means a lot to me, right? Because your name is everything, right? You live to honor the name that you were given, and so I've tried to do that throughout the course of my life. Becoming a two-time national champion, two-time college graduate. And now pursuing a PhD while, being a professor, traveling around the country, speaking, all these things. I never forget my roots, right? Where I come from and my name that I carry, and that means a lot to me. And so that's a little bit about who I am.
Awesome, man. We're going to definitely unpack the story a little bit, man, because you have accomplished some phenomenal feats, man. So just kind of, you say you from Florida, man. Kind of get an upbringing, man, how life was for you coming up.
Man, life in Florida, inner city, growing up near, poverty, and then 15 minutes away from wealth. So you kind of in the middle of it all. You see, all the different socioeconomic status, backgrounds, all the different race, ethnicities, you name it, right? So it's diverse, it's inclusive, but at the same time, it's also, an environment that's challenging, right? And so growing up, I remember very early on, understanding the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And I understood that we had just what we needed, and that, God always provided. In the center of that was my grandmother, right? So grandma house, right? Like, being raised, the youngest of all the grandchildren. My parents had me later in their life, so they had me at 40. And my brother and I were 11.5 years apart. So, I always grew up around wisdom, around older people, my uncles, old heads, OGs, that had a lot of game, a lot of wisdom to provide. And so I soaked it up, good or bad, right? I learned a lot through other people's experiences and, just took in a lot of wisdom as a kid, which, to my self-destruction and self-enhancement, it was good and bad, in my life. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, great, man. I know I didn't want to put the cat in the bag yet about your accomplishments on the field, man, but I know you had some great things there. But how was it for you? Was you directly involved in sports, or were you kind of found that later? How did that transpire for you where you had some other challenges? Because, some of us sometimes growing up around certain environments, sometimes certain things pull a certain way. So how did that come about for you?
Man, honestly, I appreciate the question. Growing up, for me, a ball was put in my hands at like 3 or 4 years old. All I knew was football, basketball, and throughout the course of my life, I was thinking back on this earlier. I was never idle. I always was playing a sport. I always was doing something. And it was a time period in my life, all the way leading up to the third grade, where I've been playing sports consistently, nonstop. And my grandmother had passed, who I had mentioned. And I remember there being a pause, right? And it was a really dark period in my family's life because my grandma was kind of like that glue that held the family together. And, man, playing AAU basketball, Little League, Pop Warner football, right? All that stuff up until about middle school. And I kind of got really unfocused, right? I was going through a very dark period in my life where my father and I and my mother were all going through it. And my brother was away in college and trying to, pretty much get his life on the right path by graduating. And man, it was a challenging time. It was '08. It was the recession. My father was hit with cancer for the second time. He was hit with potentially going away, doing 25 to life in prison for vehicular homicide. And, my mom's business was struggling as a hair owner, of a hair salon. So I started making some moves, getting out there in the streets, trying to do a few things, trying to uphold the family name in the wrong way. And I made a lot of mistakes that could have costed me, but God kept me. He spared me through it. And I distinctly remember, man, like that switch, that shift that happened in my life, where my older brother was my built-in mentor who moved back home to Fort Lauderdale when I was in the 8th grade, transitioning to the 9th grade to help me and make sure that I made it through the hurdles that I was faced with in front of me, because he had already faced them. And so I thank him. As soon as he got out of college, first thing you're thinking about is not living your life, it's coming back and saving your little brothers. Like, so that was my key to success that got me out of some of the mess that I placed myself in earlier on in my life.
Man, that's big, man. That's big. So knowing that, especially in 2008, 2009, a lot of us going through a lot of challenges, but just to know your family has some deeper things they had to. What was the things, like you say, your brother played a major part, and what else, like I say, got you in that space where, hey, now back into school, where your grades, getting back on the grades, getting back into your sports and things like that? What was that look like, that transition?
Man, it's a 3D principle that I share oftentimes. It was discipline plus dedication minus distractions brought me a lot of success. And what I mean by that was, oftentimes you do just enough, right? And you think that that's going to get you where you want to get to in life. Like, I worked out with the team, right? Like, I was at every meeting, but what were you doing beyond that? And so that's where my brother challenged me a lot, right? Like, when we would get done with our team workouts, typically in the 9th grade, you just happy that you worked out with the team. My brother was like, no, like, now the workout really starts. So we would leave the gym, go to the gym again, clock in at LA Fitness, get our workout in, work on the things I needed to work on, and do that repetitively every day. And so the goal was to put in 10,000 hours, because if you could put in 10,000 hours at anything, inevitably you become great at it, right? And so the goal was, it was like, okay, we're going to put in an additional 10,000 hours in addition to what's already required. So that's going to strengthen your case. Like, when it comes down to getting recruited, there won't be a question. Like, you'll get recruited because you'll have the grades, you'll have the work ethic, you'll understand what it takes, because I'm going to show you day in and day out what it takes to get to college starting now. And it was like we was on the clock, and every day we was racing against it. And I had somebody that was young enough, relevant enough, and social enough to be able to connect with me. And he just so happened to be my own blood at the right time. So it was like, I mean, you couldn't have drew up a better play with a better duo.
Yeah. So now going into your high school, things like that. So how did that look? And what positions did you play? And kind of what was that transition now that you, in your high school years, getting ready to go on further to college and things like that?
Man, so it wasn't easy. I was out of position, put it this way. Like, how sometimes you find yourself playing a position or a role because that's what everybody else thinks or they perceive you as. And so I was a taller kid, right? Hadn't really filled out yet. I've always played up, right, a grade level, because naturally I started school early. So I've always been a grade ahead, right? So I never reclassified or anything. I always just played up. That's how I grew up, playing ball in the street against older boys, stuff like that, murder ball. Then you grow up, you play organized football. I'm always playing up. And so it never really dawned on me until high school. And so I started playing defensive back, safety, right? And just wasn't working out. Like, I remember this distinctly. I went to a camp, right? My 9th grade off season. And there was a guy that was coming onto the scene and not a lot of people really knew his name nationally yet. And his name was Amari Cooper, by the way. And I was going up against him at a camp, right? And let's just say within the 2 reps that I went against him, I realized safety was no longer going to be my position. I was going to transition to something else. And it wasn't easy, right? Because I was like, man, he different. And he made a name for himself that day. Like, it started that day and beyond. And so I realized I had some work to do that off season. So I had to really work on my mentality and make a shift back to linebacker, outside linebacker, where I started to really showcased my natural ability on top of the work that I had been putting in the weight room and everything like that, getting strong, being able to bench 225, 25, 30 times like it's nothing, and showcase that speed and athleticism. So that put me at the top, right? So I went from fighting to get on the field as safety to being at the top playing linebacker. And then as I got closer to the ball and started playing defensive end, it was just a natural fit because my body had started to fill out. My mindset, my mentality was there. Everything was starting to just click. And so that's where things took off from there, man.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. So how did that look in your senior year? What were you highly anticipated to go? What would that look like for you?
Man, senior year was a blur because I remember softly wanting to verbally commit to University of Florida. Then I backed out of that. And then I wanted to go to University of Notre Dame. So I actually did verbally commit to University of Notre Dame. Then halfway through my senior year, things were starting to pick up real heavy. Obviously, as a U.S. Army All-American, 4-star, 5-star recruit, you got a lot of schools, you got a lot of things on your mind. So, I made a decision. I wanted to go visit Clemson. So Clemson was one of the first schools that offered me my sophomore year. So I went and I visited. I was like, yeah, I think I might be switching it up again. Like I couldn't make up my mind because I had so many people in my ear, man. And that's the thing. It's like when you're going through that process, it's not just you. It's so many people tied to your destiny that want to see you do well. They might not always want something back in return, but they just want to see you do well. And everybody get invested. Everybody want to know what decision you're going to make, So I remember it coming down to National Signing Day for me to actually make a firm decision that I was going to stick with. And it was between University of Texas, Notre Dame, and Clemson, and University of Florida. So, God told me what to do, and I ran the play. And I decided to go to Clemson, and, the rest has been history.
Wow, that's cool, man. That's cool. Well, definitely, I assume you don't regret that decision. So
No.
How did that work out for you once you got to Clemson?
Man, I tell you this, my brother told me this the day he dropped me off to college, and I didn't quite understand what it meant then, but I understand it now. He said, you're going to have to fight your own fight, little bro. Like, there's going to be some things that take place. All I can tell you is it's not going to be something I can save you from. You're going to have to go through it. And I'll be darned, bro. Like, first week, on campus, I'm running into adversity, right? Like, I mean, you come in with that mentality. I'm a young dude from Florida. I'm highly recruited, all that. And it's like, bro, miss us with that energy. Like, get up out of here with that. Like, you know what I'm saying? The older boys that's done been there, that's done established their way, they're like, hold on, young Thundercat, like, slow your roll. And I had to understand what that was and what that meant. And so, bro, going through that humbling process of highly recruited to becoming red-shirted, and being behind, excuse me, guys like Vic Beasley, who was a first-round pick, guys like Shaq Lawson early on in my career, who was a first-round pick as well, and several others. I learned. I had to understand the process was for me to learn what I needed to know and unlearn the things that I didn't need that no longer served me for where I was trying to go to. And that was a process, man. I bumped my head, man, on and off the field. And I learned from those situations during that time period of being, groomed and potentially taking, the reins in the future. So, man, it was humbling for sure to go from that to then climbing the ladder, getting back to the top. By the time we had won the national championships and then breaking my neck in a severe car wreck on June 3rd. After that was a lot to climb, and then opportunity come. And, that adversity that my brother was telling me about, it showed up at the door.
Wow,
I had to deal with it.
Take us through that. I didn't know much about that situation, man. So now that you in some great things are going for you, you're on the field, and you had a major accident. What was that about?
So, okay, imagine this: a typical day. Greenville, South Carolina. For those who are listening that are familiar or not familiar, the area at the time was under construction. And so there was a lot of roadways being expanded. And so basically where I was positioned, I was getting off on a turning ramp from Greenville coming back to Clemson from getting something to eat in Greenville at a Jamaican spot that I love. And I ended up getting off on the ramp. It was raining, so it was a little wet. And so my tires locked, the car skidded and then shot across the highway off the road onto the side of the road, was going like full-fledged into like a gate, or just like you on the side of the side of the road. So there was a culvert, right? Or like a ditch kind of like area that was not marked. And my car was at the time was a Honda Civic, was driving and planted and flipped twice. And all I remember was saying, oh, and then closing my eyes, waking up, and the car was back on all fours and my neck was broke. And I was stuck in the car seat. And there were people that were, I guess they saw what had taken place and they were already there on the scene. So when I got out of the car, they were like, hey, do you want us to call the ambulance? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Call the ambulance. And all I remember from there was being rushed to the hospital, waking up, doctor saying, normally in your situation, people are normally either dead or they're paralyzed. You're neither. Thank God. You were this close. You were this close from your spinal cord being ruptured and being paralyzed. You will walk again, but it's going to be a very long, painful process. And from there, man, my assignment shifted.
Wow, man. So now that you've gone through this situation, it took you quite a while to recover. So how did that, play into how things perspired into your future? What did you see yourself? I don't know if it ended your career, or did you see yourself, man? I know it was a lot of pressure to move beyond, but kind of give us a little bit about that journey, how that moved forward for you.
It's a slow process, right? I call it, a 3-step process of time, distance, and covering. And there was a lot of time where, when someone tells you for the next year or for the foreseeable future, there will be no football, that's devastating to a young man. But then when you line that up with the perspective of, well, you could either be dead or paralyzed and you're neither, then you start weighing the options and you're like, okay, so it's not that bad, but it's bad, but it's not that bad, right? Like in the beginning. And, man, with the medicine and, the level of care that you're up under, you're sedated, right? So, it doesn't really hit you all at once. It's a slow unraveling process. So in the beginning, man, I remember spending days just writing, just, getting my thoughts out of my head, because I was trying to make sense of this new world that I was all of a sudden thrusted into seemingly. And, man, there was many days I would be in bed. My wife, now girlfriend then, was taking care of me, making sure I got washed, clean, like just the basics in life that we take for granted every day, right? Like being able to still do those things, but it's a different way about which you have to go about doing these things, right? Can't drive, can't do this, can't, all these things you can't do. But what I can do is make sure my heart works. What I can do is make sure my mind good. And after a period of time, your mind will start to play tricks on you. And so for me, man, I'll be transparent and honest. I didn't handle some of those times well with, the pills and, the access to certain drugs and, the sitting there all day and just being in your own head after a while and not knowing what to do or how to get outside of your own mind or your own body. And so I made some very poor choices as a result of my own addictions, right? And so I had to really sit with myself and be still and learn that, look, you can't wreck out and kill yourself because of something that you didn't foresee happening to you. And you can't sit here and blame anybody for it other than this was God shifting, again, your assignment from being the one who was getting served to now serving other people. And man, when I had that revelation, I began to coach. I went back, got my master's degree, finished my undergrad degree still in time early in 3.5 years, and went on to do some amazing things, had surgery multiple times on my neck. But God still provided. He still made a way. I walked away with no student loan debt. I didn't have the stress of what most people would have on their life, on my life yet, because I was still covered, right? And so even though I was distanced from the thing that I love, football, right, there was still covering there, my academics, all that stuff still being paid for, everything still being taken care of. So when I looked up, I was in a position where I could make a decision on, do I want to go out into the real world or do I want to play football again? But I'm going to have to do it somewhere else. I decided I wanted to play football again after a 2-year crazy journey, mentally, physically, as I just explained, exhausting, emotionally, spiritually. But I had a second opportunity to play again at Boston College and, end my career on the right note, as a Brian Piccolo comeback player award winner, traveling the country, doing the Jim Rome show, doing ESPN, all these different takes. And life seemingly took a turn, right? Because I was faithful over the things that most people probably would have pushed to the side, right? Wow. I was like, I'm going to just do what I got to do right here, and it's going to take me where I need to go.
Man, I love the fact that that dedication that it took for you to overcome those barriers, man. Some of us take it for granted, the ease of life, but then when we are given an opportunity to seize that moment, and I know, like I said, the work you had to put in was a lot of very uncomfortable, but you fought to get past that. And so I want to take it now to what you're doing now, because you're still in the trenches, even though now you've gotten your degrees, but you're still going to further your education. So even those things that you did then, you're still applying now. What do you tell yourself and tell others? Because I know you are a speaker and those things. What's some of that messaging that you really, you put into what you're saying that you even apply yourself? What is that you tell to the world?
Man, it's simple. The man is greater than the brand. You hear all the things that I do, but do you really know my heart? Do you really know why I do what I do? Do you know what really make me tick? Do you understand that for me, it's not about what you hear, it's about what you see. And when people see me, they see, one, I hope they see God, and two, I hope they see my kids and my family, right? And so out of everything that we're talking about today, the most important thing I want people to understand is that I am a man first, right? So I'm flawed as a human, but God is who has created this vision inside of me that's going to live well beyond me, right? And it's planted in my character. It's ingrained in my DNA. Like, I'm determined to showcase that if you really give your life over to Christ and quit playing with him and pick up the phone, and when he's calling, collect, answer, and don't hang up, and say yes in your spirit, not yes out loud for everybody to say, but confirm it in your spirit, then you'll walk into your greatness. You'll walk into your purpose. You'll walk into all that you're destined to be, and everything else will be easy. You can compartmentalize what everybody's asking you to do and focus on what you actually want to do. Like, instead of getting paid to talk, why don't you get paid more to think? That's what I think about. When I think about my messaging that I'm really trying to get across to people, is that my man and who I am is going to be greater than anything that I do or that people say about me.
Wow, that's awesome, man. So I want to dig down in that path, man, because that's awesome. What you're saying is what I stand on, Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So I always say the best sermon is how you live versus what you say. And so now that you're saying, hey, this is when you take the torch and pick up the torch and follow that, what God has called you to, he'll direct, he'll open up doors, close doors. You might not understand how it's going to happen, but it shall happen the way he's instructed it to happen. And so now let's kind of just talk a little bit about that journey, what it looks like now, because I met you through Next Level. Through that platform. Kind of speak on how that looks for you as a speaker, as a professor, and some of the things you're involved in now.
Yeah, man. I mean, as a professor here at Clemson University in the College of Education, as a PhD student in higher education, and understanding my role within Next Level as a door opener, as someone who's gone, been on tour with Dr. Eric Thomas over the past 2 years, year and a half, learned a lot, gleaned from Jeremy Anderson, gleaned from Inky Johnson, gleaned from CJ, Carlos Quinney, Coach Crump, you name it, the list goes on and on. Time and time again, I think it's about how you steward those relationships, though, right? Like, I don't just throw those names out there without saying, hey, they've poured into me, and I'm thankful for the community that we're surrounded with, and being able to meet like-minded folks such as yourself. And the thing that I want to get across is this: is we think it's about currency, we think it's about dollars and cents. It's about making it make sense. And I could say this: at 27, 28 now, I'm trying to really make it make sense before life start telling me what sense I'm gonna make. Does that make sense? And so I'm not gonna live my life wishing and dreaming and wondering. I'm gonna live my life full speed ahead, like not letting nothing stop me. Because I know at the end of the day, if you're surrounded by people who are chasing similar or like-minded things, that competition can breed envy or jealousy, or it can bring out the best in you, and you can collaborate with other people and realize it's lonely at the top, so we might as well just go there together, right? And so that's kind of where my mind is at as it relates to building out this community, as it relates to my vision with everything that I do. It's like, if I put God first, others second, and myself last and third, I'm always in alignment with the mission, right? And the vision of what he's telling me to do, regardless of the role, where I'm at in life. I'm me. Like, I'm grounded, I'm centered in being me. And nothing's going to stop me from being the best version of myself, other than allowing somebody or something to get in my ear or to get my eyes. But I'm not going to let something like that happen. I'm on guard.
Awesome, man. And I love the fact that you took in the opportunities that when you've been asked to do a certain thing, or you just raise your hand to get involved. So I know you as now been given a position over the Carolinas to be the Carolinas president chapter of the next level. And I know, you're going to bring a lot of greats to the table, but this is an opportunity where you'll be able to help those who are looking to become professional speakers, such as myself, to really grow in that space. And so we appreciate you stepping up and raising your hand to say, hey, I got you. We're going to do this together and learn. And so that's a big thing that you have even there. But I know you got some future goals as well. You sharing about you starting a school, you're doing all these things. So I love just take a few moments to kind of share what does that look like?
Yeah, man. So when you talk about being a speaker, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you speak on, right? Like, where do you speak from? Like, and I speak from a place of truth, living it out right now. I'm honest with you, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm building a business, though, as well as I'm building my speaking platform. So for me, I've always had this idea of either you're going to do life in prison, or you can just continue to do life in school, right? You pick your poison. So for me, I've made that decision in my life. I'd rather do life in school. And with that, right, like going speaking all these schools, right, across the country, high school, middle school, college, all these places. But then you come back home to an empty house, but you got money. That's cool. But what are you really building, and what are you going to leave behind for your next generation? Because the good book says a wise man leaves behind an inheritance for his children's children's children. So for me, I'm looking to build a pathway all the way from pre-K all the way to college, starting with building a school and then building out a pathway to get to me in college, being your professor, and then walking you through the steps of life. So I've come up with this model of a K through 12 private school, which is revolving around STEM-based curriculum. And it's going to be here in the upstate of South Carolina, in Anderson County specifically. And it's going to resolve a lot of the national achievement gap issues as it relates to reading, math, and writing scores. So the focus is going to be centered on underserved, underprivileged communities that don't necessarily have access to these type of resources. And it's all going to be in connection with the plan to put them in a better position as far as the workforce is concerned in the future. Right. And I'm excited about it. It's a big vision. And so it takes a village, but I'm honored to have shared that here on your platform, man. Thank you for giving me the space and the time.
No doubt, man. Well, if anybody wanted to connect with you, how could they find out more about yourself, Richard?
Yes, sir. So you can go to www.richardyergin.com or follow me on any social media platforms, whether that's Instagram, whether that's Twitter, or whether that's just TikTok, or however you do it, at Professor Yearg, as you see here listed on the show, Professor, and then Yearg.
No doubt, man. Well, we appreciate you giving us time out of your day, man. You got a lot of great things going. We appreciate everything you're doing. And we thank everybody for stopping in and checking out this episode. Do like, do subscribe. But in the meantime, be great.